The countdown is on. Here's a live picture from our nation's capital where in just a couple hours, former special counsel Robert Mueller will be grilled by lawmakers on the Russia report. House Democrats huddling in a last-minute practice session last night. It's a make or break moment for their case against the president. This morning, the Justice Department is instructing Mueller that he must stay within the boundaries of his report. Alicia explains how we got to this point. Alicia?
Yeah, Gia, this entire thing, it's been going on for more than 3 years now. So let's take a quick look back at what got us to today's testimony. Now, in May of 2016, the Russia investigation started with a warning about Donald Trump's presidential campaign foreign policy advisor by leaders from Australia. A Trump advisor was in London where he was accused of bragging to an Australian diplomat that the Russians had dirt on Hillary Clinton. Now, just a few months later, WikiLeaks started publishing emails that were stolen from the Democratic National Committee's servers. Soon after that, the FBI launched into investigation of possible links between the Russians and Trump campaign officials. And by 2017, several congressional committees had gotten involved with investigations of their own. Now, Trump, he was actually firing his FBI director, James Comey, at the time, and Attorney General Jeff Sessions recused himself, and that's when Special Counsel Robert Mueller was appointed to lead the investigation. So let's fast forward to April of 2019. Just 4 months ago, the Mueller report was released, all 438 pages of it. It states that the investigation did not find sufficient evidence to pursue charges, but it did not clear the president of any wrongdoing either. Robert Mueller will be answering some pretty tough questions today about that report. The president has been tweeting about it all week, and just 15 minutes ago, he tweeted this, accusing Democrats of fabricating a crime and pinning it on a very innocent president. Now, the biggest looming question that Democrats are hoping to get answered today is if Mueller would have charged Trump if he was not a sitting president. The likelihood that Robert Mueller answers that question is very slim.